So today we're doing something a little bit different. I'm Brian Collins, and I've done a lot of time-lapse videos for you guys. And during Inktober, I did just some sort of explanation videos, some shorts about the 31 drawings that I did for that. So today we're actually going to go through in real time how I do a piece from start to finish. It's a smaller piece, but you guys have been asking for this. A lot of you have anyway. I've created about 26 different Pokemon in my own versions. And one of the ones that I haven't done yet that you guys have been asking for is Psyduck. So that's what we're doing today. So yeah, I'm gonna just kind of explain the process and just sort of share how I do everything step by step. So I don't do any digital art. However, I do have an iPad, and when I am sketching, for the sake of saving time and resources, I will draw things out sometimes on the iPad in Procreate, and then I will use that to create the final image. So I'll show you what I have here so far. Hopefully this shows up pretty good for you guys. So this was the first sketch that I did. Hopefully you can see that without too much glare or anything. Just used like a lighter sort of tan color, and went back over it with a black outline so I can remove that. And now I'm going to send this over to my printer and create it in the 5x7 size that I will use to make a transfer to go onto the substrate. So I'll show you that in just a moment. All right, so now we have the printed outline of Psyduck, and what I've done is I have reversed it, just flipped it horizontally, because since I'm going to use the tracing paper to capture an image to then flip over and transfer onto the substrate, it's going to end up getting flipped. So I had to flip it first like this. I'm going to use a regular pencil to trace it with my light table. You can see I have Gengar, Rayquaza, and Blastoise that I've already done on here. All of these prints and a couple of these originals are available on my site, briancollinsart.com, if you want to check that out. And yeah, so now I'm going to use some tracing paper. I'm going to trace this guy out with a pencil. And once I have that outlined, I'll flip it over and put it onto the tone tan paper that I'll be using for the colored version. And so I'm going to go ahead and, it's kind of boring, so I'm not going to make you watch the whole video of me tracing. But when I get back, I will show you what the final tracing looks like before it goes onto the substrate. See you here in a second. All right, we're putting the last few lines in here with my trusty light table. I have had this light table for decades. I don't even remember where I got it. I think I've replaced the bulb in it once, and this thing is held up, and I can't tell you how many drawings I've done just like this. So we're really just trying to establish an outline to know where to color. It's like I'm almost creating my own coloring book. And so I got this finished here now. Not sure how well you can see it, but I got something white to put behind it. All right, so yep, that's Psyduck, and now what we're gonna do, I'm gonna flip it over so it ends up back the original way, and then do a rubbing onto some tone tan paper. So let me get that for you. So this is a 6" by 8" piece of tone tan paper, and I like to work on a little bit larger piece than what the final is going to be, so that if anything happens with the edges or the corners, those are going to be cut off before the final piece is matted or framed. So you kind of have a little bit of area there that can be damaged if it slides off your table or if it just gets dirty during the process. So what we're doing here, you may have done this before, you may know exactly what's going on, but if not, I'll just kind of explain. I'm centering it up because I want the final to be a 5x7, so I want to be as close to the middle as possible for when I do my cutting. It looks pretty good there. And so now, holding it still carefully, not moving it, I'm just going to apply pressure with the pencil. I know you can't see it at the angle that you're at, but I'm just pushing down to make sure that the original line drawing is getting pressed, like the graphite from the original drawing is getting pressed onto the toned tan paper, and then that's going to be the outline that I work from. So you don't have to push super hard. You don't want to make indentations in your paper. I mean, you can probably do that later when you're coloring, but just some steady pressure. And you don't even have to like perfectly follow the line. You can probably tell I'm just sort of scribbling over top of it. So that's all you really need to do. Because no matter how loosely you're pushing on this top piece here, the bottom lines, if they were traced correctly, are going to come out sharp and smooth regardless of what the top looks like. And I actually find it's a little easier to make the top rough because then you can see what you have already transferred and what still needs to be transferred. I used to try to, just stay right on my lines and make it perfect. And A, there's no point to that. It's just extra stress and takes longer. And then B, it's really difficult to tell what you've already transferred. So I'm going to finish pressing this in and then I'll get back to you with the next step. All right, it's hard to see all the lines at this point, but here we are. We have the line drawing transferred to the tone tan paper. So as long as we're careful not to smudge any of this as we're working, and I'll show you what I do to avoid that, then we should be good to go. And anything that does rub off, we can put it back on there by hand without going back to the tracing. So I'm going to set this phone up so that I can video from a good angle that you guys can see. And yeah, we'll keep moving forward. So now we're ready to start adding some color. And I don't want to rub off any of the graphite that I've transferred here from the tracing paper. So I've picked Prismacolor Premier is the pencil that I use, and I've picked Chestnut, which is PC1081. And that's what I'm going to outline most of the body with here. And the reason I chose this color is that I can go darker with it if I want to, but I knew I wanted a color that was darker than the body just to give it that pop, almost like that cartoon kind of effect. So that's really all I'm going to be doing now is just tracing my outline. Not super hard and not super thick, because I can adjust all of that stuff later in the piece. Right now, I just want to, like I said, I want to establish these lines and make sure they're not going to get rubbed off when I start coloring. And the outline is going to be thicker in some places and thinner in others. So where it doesn't perfectly match up, like you see this little bulge here, I'm going to be feathering this in later. I don't really need to do it right now, but I'm just showing you what I'm going to do. That way you kind of get an idea for how we keep things looking smooth here. So that'll kind of be all the way around. Plus, personally, I think that drawings tend to look better when there is a variation in lines. I don't really like one line thickness all the way through, and that's something that I learned from my years of tattooing, was that again, this is just an aesthetic preference, that I like tattoos that have varieties of line thickness. So since my only real formal art training was a tattoo apprenticeship, that's what I go with. So I tend to bring what I learned in the tattoo industry over into my 2D art. And I think it translates pretty well for the style of art that I do. So that's what we're going to be doing. And once I get the rest of this outlined here, uh-oh, my dog's whining down there. Hopefully you don't hear that. If you've ever come to see me at the Riverside Arts Market, you have met the dog in topic here, and that's my little Boston Terrier, Luna. She tends to get a little upset when she hears me talking and doesn't know who I'm talking to. So since I'm making a video, that's what's going on. And yeah, so if you haven't been to the Riverside Arts Market, it's in Jacksonville, Florida. It's every Saturday underneath the Fuller Warren Bridge from 10 to 3, rain or shine, because we're under a bridge. So come check that out, Jacksonville, Florida, every Saturday, Riverside Arts Market. And now the doorbell rings because my canvas stretcher bars probably just got delivered. So you're really getting a day in the life of the artist here with this video. I do work from home full time, and art is my only job. So Luna and I spend the day together waiting for someone to ring the doorbell and drop off a package. So yeah, I'm going to do the same thing with the other parts here. I'm not going to make you watch all of the outlining, but I'm going to do the same kind of theory here where I'm using a darker color. So these orange blossoms, the leaves, I'll use a darker green than what I want the middle to be. And same thing for Psyduck's feet and beak. And we'll get back to you and show you that in just a second. Now that we have everything outlined, we're going to start adding our substance, I guess you'd say. So what I like to do, I'm not really prepared here. What I like to do is just kind of pick an area, usually farther away from my dominant hand, so that I'm not rubbing over everything that I've already finished. So, we'll start over here with these leaves, and I'm going to begin just by adding some shadow with black. I'm not pressing fully into the paper, so I'm not sure how well you can see, but you can still see the grain of the pencil, because I am going to massage that in with the green of the leaf. So it's going to blend the two together. So it's one of the tricks that I use to get a really smooth look. So I'm just going to go all the way around and kind of do this over here. Again, I'm not going to do this section yet because we'll work our way across. But I'm going to find all the places where there would be a shadow cast from a light source that I have not yet identified, which is important to do. Obviously, Art 101, right? But sometimes I just start putting it where it feels natural, and then I figure out a light source later. I know that's not the professional way to do it, but it's the artsy way to do it, right? So yeah, maybe, we'll put our light source over here because we want to illuminate Psyduck's face. So yeah, our top right corner is going to be our light source. So pretty much everything over here will be shadowed, right? Because Psyduck is sort of casting a little bit of a shadow on all of this. So we can kind of make it dark everywhere. So we're going to add in all these shadows. And once again, for the sake of time in this video, I'm not going to do it all, but let's go ahead and do one of these leaves. So you can kind of see the process of that. And then I'll go around off camera and finish these leaves so redundancy doesn't drive you crazy. So we'll start with this one down here because it's kind of out of the way. Got that in there with the black. And we're going to find sort of a natural looking green color. Again, it's a Pokemon, so we want it a little cartoony. But we don't want it like over the top cartoony, right? Not for my style anyway. Even though it still tends to end up that way because whimsy and cartoony tend to go together, and I do love me some whimsy. So I'm blending in over the black with a dark green. If you'd like to know, it is Marine Green, PC988. And I'm using more pressure now. So I don't know, hopefully you can see. I know I'm not zoomed in super close, but this was kind of an impromptu video. I didn't really plan it out. I just wanted to give you guys a little more insight into how stuff is actually done here in my studio. And yeah, just to connect with you guys a little more. You've been asking a lot of questions, like directly through emails and through my site. And so I thought I'd be able to answer some of those common questions here. So that's the point of this video. And yeah, kind of feathering away from the black. So I'll push hard and then I'll get lighter as I go away. And the reason for that is because when I add my next color, I'm going to do basically what I did with the black. I'm going to use the darker color underneath to transition to the lighter green, varying my pressure so that the outer edges of the new color are soft and just sort of laying on top of the paper, waiting to be pressed in by the next color. We're blending that out. And now we want, we're going to go kind of bright here. What do we have here? This is apple green, PC912. And we're going to do the bottom with that. And I'm going to leave just a little there on the top for our highlight color. And then I'm going to show you the next little trick that I do with all these Pokemon. So for our highlight color, we're going to go pretty bright for drama and contrast. I don't know the name because it's missing, but we got PC1089. I'm going to add this on top. And there's no reason to go light with this one because we're not transitioning away from this color. So we're just pushing it in, you know, not hard enough to break the pencil, of course. And now we'll clean it up. So we got a little spot here that should be darker. So I'm going back to the green. And I feel like the transition's a little bit harsh there. Not sure if you agree, but because I think so, and one of the great things about Prismacolors is you can do some blending. Just going to darken that highlight up a little bit with, man, that thing's hard to read. With this green. Maybe that's a 913. It's kind of been wiped away. All right, and I can go back to that if I need to. So now here's the little trick that I've been doing with the Pokemon. I find a color that I think will complement the color I'm working on, but it's not in the same realm of color. And I use that to create this cool little halo effect. And it just makes them look a little bit more vibrant than bringing my color all the way up to the outline. So I'm going to do this blue here. Got a couple different blues. And I'm going to also blend this here. I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap there so that I can use another light blue and make that thing stand out. So my green leaf now has a blue line around it. And I'll continue doing the leaves here and then show you the next step. So now with the orange blossoms colored in, we're going to start working on the feet because I can still work this direction and not really rub my hand over that too much. But in full disclosure, once again, this is actually the 4th day that I've worked on this piece. So, you know, in the video, this is really day 4 of filming. That's not dark enough. We're going to find a different color. Because on day 1, I worked on the Procreate sketch, and then day 2, I did the outline. Day 3 is when I worked on the orange blossoms. And now we're day 4, because, you know, being a full-time artist does not mean working on art every single day. Just like you guys, I got life going on, a lot of other things to do. So I don't get as much time to make art as I wish I had. And yeah, so day 4 with, I don't know, a few hours in it, I guess, total, if you count the sketching. So I'm using, oh man, we got another pencil that's almost completely rubbed off here. It looks like a 1065. 70% cool gray. This one was too light, this 936 slate gray. But now that I have it, I think I'm going to blend the two together, because one of the other things that I like to do with my art, and this is just one little trick, is had somebody tell me once never to use paint straight out of the tube, the color that the factory made it, that you should always use paints to blend with other paints to create your own palette and give the art your own voice. And so that's what I do with the pencils, is I try never to use like one straight color right on. It does happen. I mean, I'm going to do it at times if the color's right, but I prefer to do things like that, where I'll blend it in and give it everything its own unique tone. And yeah, does that work for you? Let me know in the comments if you guys like to blend, or if you prefer going straight with what you got, because sometimes that is the right result. Sometimes the color's perfect and there's no need to change it. So just like with the rest of the piece here, I'm going increasingly adding pressure after doing this. And that's how you go from this rough looking texture to the smooth texture, is by layering it out. And this is my shadow. I know his feet are a lighter color. We're going to get there. But right now I kind of want a dramatic shadow. So that's what I'm going for. If you hear some weird sounds in the background, it's because Luna has one of her favorite toys, and she's shaking it around like she's seeking revenge. So she's a little wild behind me. And yeah, I'm not going to be able to put a lot of time into this piece today either, because tomorrow I have the Riverside Arts Market in Jacksonville, where I usually set up every Saturday underneath the Fuller Warren Bridge in Jacksonville, Florida. And we got, good grief, I think it's close to 200. It's got to be 150 vendors out there or more. And so I've been setting up out there since like 2012, 2013. And if you're in the Jacksonville area, you can find me out there so we can meet in person. I always bring pretty much everything. I got originals, prints, shirts, hats, stickers, skateboard decks, and conversation. So if I haven't met you already, or if I haven't seen you in a while, or if I see you every Saturday, I hope to see you again tomorrow from 10 to 3. So now we have that shadow laid in, and it may get changed a little bit. In fact, I already see something I want to do. I'm going to bring that up just like we did over here. Because somewhat you can add pencils over other pencils if you're going darker. So there may be some things that I change. But that's where we're going to start. And my only concern now that I've done this, because see, nothing always goes as planned. I don't want this to turn green. There's definitely a blue tint to this gray, and I have a yellow here. I don't want that green. So, this is what happens when you use colored pencils versus paint. You're kind of stuck. You don't really get to paint over it if you don't like it. But I was a tattoo artist for quite some time, off and on. And that's how I tend to make my 2D art now, is like I tattooed. You just have to adapt and overcome. You can't erase. You can't let your client know, like, oops. Sometimes I would say oops just to mess with people mid tattoo, kind of freak out and give them a couple uh-ohs, especially if they're really nervous, because calms them down, ironically. But I learned to adapt and overcome, as we all should in life, right? So I just won't go all the way back into it with this color. kind of catch the edges with these couple of ochres. We got a yellow ochre 942 and a goldenrod 1034. And that's gonna transition that shadow out pretty nicely, I think. And then we'll add an even lighter color coming up from that, because Psyduck's feet are, and bill are, much lighter than his body, its body. So we don't want to keep this too dark, just enough, like I said, to add a little dynamic contrast, which Pokemon don't have. It's one of the things that I try to do when I draw Pokemon, and I said at the beginning of the video, I think this one's like number 27. I try to make them just a little more dynamic. I want them to look like they do in the cartoon series, the animated series. But I also want to give them just a little bit of realism. I've done like super realistic pieces before with, I mean, again, I don't do realism, but I did Mario and Luigi where they look kind of realistic and sort of buff. But with Pokemon, I try to keep the original feel to the characters, but still adding just a little bit more color transition than what you're used to seeing, just to bring them to life just a little bit more. Personal preference. Everyone has their own. As you watch this video and hear my techniques and whatnot, this is not a be all end all of how to do this kind of thing. This is just how one guy does it. And I'm not really giving you what I would call a tutorial. I'm just offering some tips, sharing some secrets, if you want to call them that, and just showing you how I do it. And then it's something maybe you can add to your work, or maybe you think this guy barely knows what he's doing. That's okay too, because sometimes I tell myself, man, you barely know what you're doing. But that's the artist struggle, isn't it? If you're an artist, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't care how good you are. There are times when you stand back and look at a piece in progress, or even a piece you thought was finished, and you just look at it and you go, man, I don't know what I'm doing. How can I call myself an artist? This is trash. It's rubbish. And when I do that, I like to completely step away from it before I destroy it, because when you make decisions under emotional duress, you are going to make the worst possible decision. So I'll step back and I'll collect myself, maybe go on a bicycle ride, maybe work out a little bit. My daughter and I love to brew tea, so I'll have some peppermint tea. I know it sounds really metal, doesn't it? I'll brew some tea, maybe play a video game, just kind of get past the struggle of, imposter syndrome you may have heard of, and just that I'm not good enough, and not like in a whiny way. I'm never like, I'm not good enough, but I do say, this isn't good enough. Maybe I didn't put my full effort into a certain piece, and that tends to be why it doesn't come out the way that I wanted. And I'll just look at it and doubt my skill, and it turns out that it was my mindset or my effort level that is to be in question, not my skill. And so hopefully that is something that you can take and apply to yourself as well, because again, everybody struggles with their creativity. We all want a masterpiece every time we create, right? We want it to be beautiful every time. We want people to, be impressed. We want people to be inspired. And sometimes we just fall short. It's just how it goes. The Olympics are about to start, Winter Olympics. This is currently February of 2026 when I'm filming this. And, you'll see the same thing when you watch the Olympics with athletes. They are preparing their whole lives for this moment. Sometimes they fall short. Sometimes it's because they didn't perform the way they trained. Sometimes it's things beyond their control. And I think any good athlete will tell you the failure can make you better. If you always succeed, you never change what you're doing, right? Which some would say, well, why would you need to? But I don't think repetition is what we're meant for necessarily. I think we should always change what we do and how we do it, even if just to experience something else. So while I have come up with things in art that are successful and do work, sometimes I just say, well, what happens if I do this? Let me try this a different way. Just because I've always been doing it this way doesn't mean that's the right way to do it. And I may wander a little artistically and then come back to what I was doing before, but I'll bring back to that some kind of new perspective. So I think that's good. And now I want to do my little outline, little highlight color like I did on the outside of the orange blossoms. And I have to think of what color I want to do. So we're going to have kind of an orangish color here in the body. And then we have this sort of yellowish cream color here. So on the opposite color wheel spectrum, that's going to be purple. Boom. We're going to go with purple. Because color theory says to, and because I really like the color purple. I think it is a very underrepresented color. And I'm going to add it to this. So I'll start with my darkest choice of purple here up against the body so that it complements the shadow, right? Because you don't want a bright outline color that conflicts with the inside, or it's going to start to look a little weird to the eye. So we're going to add this. I'll tell you the color in just a moment. Now for this one, we'll trick, since I'm doing it right now. Want a little bit of an angle because I want to bring my lighter color just underneath there so it doesn't wash into the darkness of the leaf. So we got, that's a 132. And then we're going to go lighter here with a, what is that, 1008. So flip this over for a second so I can get a better angle on this. Bring that one up. Actually, this one kind of took a lot of that dark away. Sometimes when you go to transition colors, you actually blend it so well that it almost erases the other color, and you can go back in and fix that if you need to. So I'm going to continue working these feet and then get back to you for the next step. All right, so now we have these lighter areas done, and I did go ahead and do the bill, even though it's on this side of the piece, because one of the things that I do is I use a shop towel. I was using toilet paper, and you go through it so fast, but a shop towel is going to last for a really long time, and these can be picked up at Harbor Freight, Walmart, anywhere like that, and I'll use this to actually buff out the wax bloom on the piece as I work and when I'm done before I use a fixative. I'm not sure how well you can see that there, but you see that it actually takes just a little bit off. But I can use that when I work if I need to. So, put it underneath your hand as you're working. But one of the points that I wanted to make right now in this stage of the piece is I do get a lot of compliments on the smoothness of shading and how I do it, and I probably shouldn't give this magic trick away, but I love you guys, so I'm going to. It all has to do with your base layers. So since I don't leave textured area of colored pencil like this, just my preferred style from years of tattooing is to really blend it in thick and saturated and full. So it really has to do with how smooth is your transition underneath what you're going to add a lot of pressure to. So if I can explain that in another way, um, you're going to want this nice smooth fade to begin with your underlying layers. So as you're going, thicker and heavier at the bottom, and then working your way out toward where you won't have that underlayer anymore, you want this transition to really just kind of disappear a little bit at a time, because then you won't end up with harsh lines underneath when you finally add your top layer of color. So you can actually see right there that that's not blended too well. There's a line right there. So now if I go over top with a lighter color and press hard, you're going to see a hard line between the two still. That hard line's not going to go away with your top layer of color. So you really have to blend that out, smooth that out first, like that. So once your underlayer is nice and smooth, in some places you'll want a little bit, like right here I want sort of a harsher drop off to my shadow. But in the places that you don't, you really need to make sure that underlayer transitions as smoothly as possible. And then your overlayer is going to be smooth like that. So another point that I'll make right now, I know I'm not doing a whole lot of drawing because I'm trying to do more talking and give you guys some real information instead of just plugging away at the art like I do in the time-lapse videos. But another thing that I'll say is, like, when you're drawing Pokemon, they're usually very two-dimensional in color. If something's yellow, it's yellow. If it's blue, it's blue. There's not really much transition and variety of tones. And so since my style does have a lot of transition in tones, I feel like that's just a more interesting way to portray a color. So for example, the bill of Psyduck is normally just a cream color all the way across. And to keep it more interesting and more dynamic, I've added as many shades of creams and ochres that I have at my disposal, all the way up to white right here on the end. And that just gives the piece less of a flat feel. And if you're going for the flat feel, that's fine. If you want your Pokemon or whatever it is that you're drawing to look exactly like the original, in this case, if you want your Pokemon to look like Pokemon um, from the source, then you are going to use a flatter, less transitioned color. But I like mine to be kind of dynamic, and so I'll use as many colors as I can in the areas that I can. As you can see here, I'm not just gonna color Psyduck's body all the way with the one color that most closely represents it. I'm gonna do as many fades and transitions as I can. So this process just continues all the way across the body, because again, this is just one color. Head and body are one color in this particular Pokemon, but I want it to look rounded. I want it to look like it's really, flexed around in a three-dimensional space. So I've got my darker color here, and I'm gonna have my lighter color in here. There's gonna be a shadow cast by the bill, and I'll get back and show you that in a minute. All right, so let me get you in a little bit closer here because I want to show you another trick that I do. I've got most of the body colored in here and still working on darkening this up as I go, because I want the contrast between the bill and the body like it is in the original Psyduck. So one thing that you can come up against that'll be problematic is when you're transitioning from a shadow to another shadow on two different parts of a body like this. So this shape is, one orb here and one orb here. So almost like a ball on a ball. So if I used the same brown that I have here, up here, this is going to wash in together, and you're no longer going to have that curvature of a ball on top of a ball. So what I've done is I've used a completely different shadow color on Psyduck's face that I used on the body. So now you clearly have two different parts here that aren't bleeding into one part. So that's a trick that might help you create more three-dimensional appearances to your art, a little more dynamic interest. And yeah, just at a quick glance, you can really see that it's, a head on top of a body and not one flat washed in piece. So next up is going to be finishing out the face here and the eyes. And I'll do the same thing. I'm not going to go solid white on the eyes. I'm going to have various shades of gray and maybe a little bit of blue that are going to create that orb effect here. And then for these, antennae hair tuft things that he has going on, it's supposed to be solid black, but I don't do anything solid black. So I'll use maybe some browns and purples to create a rounding effect to those guys as well. So I'm going to keep moving along here. I just wanted to get the camera angle here where you could see for a minute, and keep blending this out, doing the same thing here that I did here. And just wanted to share that tip with you about the two different color transitions there. And I'll be back when the head and the arms are colored and show you what I'm going to do with the eyes. All right, so here we are with pretty much everything done. And this is the tip that I find is crucial to do before you call the piece finished. And that's going back around the entire thing and sharpening your outer edges and some of your inner edges to really make it pop. And I've started to do that here because I want you to see, bring this up. If you see bottom of this eye and how that looks versus the bottom of this eye, how much sharper that looks to go around and get those lines. Yes, it does create a cartoony effect, but that's what we're trying to do here with a Pokemon. So I'm going to go all the way around and look at every part of this piece that could use a little more definition, like between the hand and the arm here. See how that brings it out? It's going to bring it away from the face just a little bit by defining this line. And this is also where earlier in the video I had mentioned the lines being different thicknesses. So this is where you're going to do that. You might want a thicker at the bottom like that and make it thinner as you go up. So we go all the way around the piece, defining these lines, changing our thickness where it needs to be. And that is really what's going to set your piece apart from some other pieces that's not been done. So I would suggest taking this extra step at the end of your work. I know you're excited when you get a piece done, you want to go ahead and pop it on social and let everybody see it, but it is worth spending the extra time to get this done. I promise you'll be happier with the piece if you do. And your supporters and fans are going to be happier with the piece because they're going to go, golly, that looks so crisp. It looks so sharp. How did you do it? Well, I just gave away the secret. That's how you do it. So we're going to go all the way around the piece like that. I can see the two eyes together. If it's your preference for this, then leave it that way. But if you really want a piece to look crisp, you're going to have to go around the entire piece and do what I just did with the eye. So I'm going to do that now, and then I'm going to cut this down and show you the final piece. And now we have the finished piece. So after the last clip, I added a little bit of shadowing underneath, and I added just some subtle psychic lines, whatever, something Psyduckish. So this has now been trimmed down to a 5x7 because in the beginning of the video I showed you we started with a 6x8 so that we wouldn't have to worry about our edges. So it's been cut down, and now I'll be able to scan it and make prints, and the original is available as of now, obviously, because it just got completed. You can check my site, briancollinsart.com. Link in the description. It is Brian with a Y, briancollinsart.com. And that's where you can check for the original. You can also pick up prints there. They're open edition prints, so they'll never sell out. Anytime you want one, I make it for you, sign it, and ship it right out. So I hope you enjoyed the process video here. And if you like this kind of video, you want more, please let me know in the comments. Please subscribe. And I hope to see you at a show soon. Yeah, check my website for the events as well. All right, bye-bye.